Welcome back to the Full Force Movie News Burst Weekly Roundup, brought to you by GeneralsJoes Reborn.com with me, Christopher McLeod, aka Diagnostic 80, and Justin Generals Joes Bell. It's been a good few weeks since we did this, so we will be bringing you a bevy of news from the last time we did this regarding the Snake Eyes G.I. Joe Origins movie. It's the full... What is it, Justin? I'm not saying it. I want you to say it.
Oh, geez. The Full Force Movie News Burst Weekly.
Yeah! Nailed it, you piece
Can't believe I remember that after a month.
That was amazing. That was brilliant, because I really did. I kind of almost faked you out that I was going to say it anyway, and you're not,
I know.
You're just like...
You threw me a curveball.
And then I was like, actually, no, Justin, you do it. And you did it, so that's amazing. Yeah, it's been a while. Apologies for the massive hiatus, but we are back.
Oh, that's all right.
We are back, and we are back.
Back and better than ever?
No, just the same. We're back and exactly the same as ever.
Hey, that's good enough.
Which is
at least you're not back and worse than ever.
Mate, good enough should be in Latin under the Full Force logo.
That'd be beautiful.
That's what we
got to
should
make
do.
Yourself like a little seal or something, and instead of e pluribus unum, it just says whatever good enough is in Latin. There you go.
It'd be e pluribus anus. Right then.
I don't even know what that means.
Neither do I. Let's move on then to, let's move into the news. We're going to start on a low point here, but in possible reboot all over again news. Yes, in a number of articles. Yeah. I mean, that's what it feels like, doesn't it? But
yeah,
in a number of articles these past few weeks, there has been more and more talk of the G.I. Joe cinematic universe getting another reboot rather than a sequel to the Snake Eyes G.I. Joe Origins movie. One of the avenues that has been discussed for said reboot is that long-awaited crossover with the Transformers franchise. With the Snake Eyes movie's poor performance at the US box office, it's going to be interesting to see just how much it makes globally and with streaming over the next few months. However, with talk of another reboot being plotted, it doesn't feel as though Paramount are massively confident of a big turnaround. With that said, Justin, what would you like to see going forward? I mean, do you want to see like another reboot, or would you want to go like maybe more of a follow-up that kind of does look into some of those shortcomings of the previous?
Here's the thing. I mean, they did this first movie in a way that, and I hate to say it because I really didn't like sort of the ham-fisted way kind of Rise of Cobra and Retaliation it was a reboot without really being a reboot.
Yeah, the soft reboot.
Yeah, I don't like that approach, but really, I mean, they barely explored the G.I. Joe Cobra dynamic in the Snake Eyes movie. You can kind of reboot without really rebooting. Exactly. I mean, you could carry stuff over into this. You don't have to tell the Snake Eyes and Storm Shadow story all over again. We know it. And you can kind of do sort of a cinematic refresh without completely wiping away the slate of the Snake Eyes movie. And I think that would be fine. I'd be happy with that approach. Not totally disregarding everything that happened in this. Nothing happened in the Snake Eyes film that you've got to say, well, we got to throw that out. That changes everything. I mean, it really, you can kind of tie that in and wrap that into whatever story they want to tell. So yeah, I think they can do both. I think they can do a soft reboot and still include what happened in the Snake Eyes movie as kind of a catalyst for how they reboot it. Does that mean Henry Golding is still Snake Eyes? I'd be fine with that. Whether or not he would be or not, I don't know. But none of the shortcomings of the film were his fault. Certainly, none of the I don't think the cast at all was to blame for any of the Snake Eyes films. So even if they wanted to bring Ursula Cabrera forward as the Baroness and Samara Weaving forward as Scarlet, I'd be fine with all of that. Yeah. I think they can kind of build upon that and, like I said, do a reboot without really doing a full reboot.
That's so true as well. I mean, as well, if you're talking about a Transformers G.I. Joe crossover as well, I don't even know how that does impact any storytelling that's already happened. You're quite right. It could just be something that happens within that universe. And I totally agree with you. I think that it's a shame that we're kind of in this position where we're looking at pretty low numbers, and also we've just obviously we'll come up to it. We'll chat about it in a second, but obviously we are now in streaming, so it's going to be interesting to see what that looks like. In like a couple of weeks' time. I don't know when they start like even really delving into the numbers of streaming.
Right.
But I mean, in terms of Black Widow, it was taken into account in the first weekend, so interesting there to go. But anyway. I mean, is the Transformers movie something that you're interested in seeing a crossover with G.I. Joe, or would you rather see something prior to that G.I. Joe related?
I would rather, from a kind of fan point of view, I'd rather they focus on G.I. Joe. But from a brand attention point of view, I think they're going to make a lot more money if they cross Transformers into it.
Yeah.
I would really like them to establish G.I. Joe as a team and as an universe, and then carry forward to Transformers, some kind of Transformers link. But we all know from the various interviews or whatever, Lorenzo Di Bonaventura is not a big fan of that sort of overarching plot and story and this kind of connective arc, actually planning future movies.
Storytelling. He's not a fan of storytelling.
He's not a fan of storytelling, yeah. So I don't know how well that would work, but I would much rather we get a solo G.I. Joe movie first, kind of establish that universe, and Transformers is its own issue because now they did that Bumblebee kind of soft reboot film, but now they're doing some weird Beast Wars thing that seems like it might tie into that, but not really. So then how do they establish Transformers in kind of a coexistence universe with G.I. Joe in a way that they can interact? It's kind of a train wreck, but yeah, I would rather they kind of build off Bumblebee, with another Transformers movie kind of set in quote unquote, modern day, the real world, sort of establish G.I. Joe, maybe put some links in, like maybe the reason that G.I. Joe is kind of focused on this high tech stuff is because of the Transformers link, and then do a movie kind of combining the two down the road. That's how I'd prefer it happen. But
that makes a lot of sense.
At this point, whatever they have to do, I'm game for. Maybe they don't have the comfort with G.I. Joe as a brand on its own anymore, and maybe they feel like they have to involve Transformers. If the only way we're going to get another G.I. Joe movie in Hollywood is to involve Transformers, I say bring it on. But I think there could be a different way to handle it.
It's a shame as well that we were, it was at a disadvantage from the get-go with COVID, with trying to force the movie earlier. All that kind of stuff seemed to kind of like play against it. Given the option, I know a lot of people that would have gone to see it but didn't because it was too much of a risk, or just the effort involved for that is too much right now. And then obviously to not have it streaming on the same day, I still think is an odd maneuver when you see just how important that was for Black Widow, just how important that was for some other film releases. And I know obviously you've got a lot of parties fighting for that right now. The theaters, they don't want everything out of the theater and they don't want people not coming to the theaters. But what can you do when no one's coming to the theaters as well? That's just not happening at the moment. So I'm kind of, it's difficult, isn't it? Because it may have done okay, not having that hampering it, but we're never really going to know.
We're never going to know. Yeah, it's you've made a very good point. It's a risk reward type of thing. I mean, people, things, well, they're not quite as better now as they were a month ago, but things were looking better at one point, but there was still risk. And it's a matter of, if I'm going to go to the theaters and risk that, I'm going to do it for something really, really good, Black Widow or something like that. I'm not going to take that risk for Snake Eyes, which might be considered kind of a second tier film. And so I think we're kind of seeing those results where they're saying risk reward, and plus we got Shang-Chi coming out in, a few weeks or whatever. And they just kind of think, well, I'm going to go to the theater as little as possible. I just went for Black Widow. I'm not going to go for Snake Eyes. Maybe I'll go for Shang-Chi or maybe I'll go for a different film, and Snake Eyes just kind of gets caught in the middle. And I agree with you on the streaming timing, especially considering they just bumped it up. It was supposed to be October, and then they bumped it up till
3 days
August
ago.
Yeah, and it's like, well, could you have done a simultaneous release? I mean, at this point, people who might have been tempted to pay $20 to stream it, they're going to be like, oh, it's got 40% on Rotten Tomatoes. I'm not going to watch this thing. If they'd released it on streaming right away, before they kind of heard the word of mouth, maybe they would have jumped in and done it. It's really tough to say. I would say from my perspective, I've got a kid at home who's too young to be vaccinated. I really had to think about whether or not I wanted to go to the theater, and ultimately I did, and it was fine because the theater was practically empty, which says its own kind of talk about the popularity. But yeah, I mean, as an avid fan of the brand for 40 years, I really had to stop and think about whether or not I wanted to do this. And if I'm doing that, I would imagine almost everybody else is as well.
Well, something you mentioned there, Justin, about the release of the streaming situation is the next news topic. So let's move into digital home release news. So on Monday, Paramount Pictures announced that Snake Eyes G.I. Joe Origins was being released for premium digital and premium video on demand formats, despite reports a few days prior that it was being pushed to October 19th. The DVD, 4K and Blu-ray platforms will have to wait until that date, but at least we can enjoy the film streaming right now. The physical formats will also contain a number of new behind-the-scenes features, as well as some deleted scenes, which I'm very interested in checking out. And we've got another story on a couple of those deleted scenes as well to chat about in a second. But first off, we've already talked about this in a sense, but I think let's focus on then, in that case, let's focus on the physical formats in October. Obviously, that makes sense that that's when they're going to be released, because that stuff takes time to produce. I understand that. But in terms of the streaming, we've already mentioned that probably should have happened on the day of release. That should have been the case. Just due to the nature of what we were dealing with here. It's a weird time. But are you excited for the physical copies? Because that's something that I'm looking forward to delving into all that extra footage, honestly.
Yeah, I'd love to see some of those deleted scenes and kind of get a little bit more exploration to sort of the making of the film. I think, interestingly, I've found a lot of sort of the stuff we've seen on Instagram and in various places, YouTube, are kind of the behind-the-scenes stunt work. I found that, in a way, a little bit more interesting than the end result, just because of the way the director kind of jumped around and did what he did. But yeah, so I'm really curious to see kind of how those play out as far as the deleted scenes and some of the behind-the-scenes stuff goes. That should be pretty exciting to check out.
Yeah, and I suppose speaking about those deleted scenes, we might as well move straight into that, and the fact that we got two, basically. I sent one earlier in the group. I'm not sure if you've seen that one yet, but it was the one that the blind master where he throws the dart and it kind of goes between all of the...
they had that in the trailer and then it was never in the movie.
Never in the film. And, that was cut out. Obviously, there was the Baroness meeting Snake Eyes scene in the bathhouse where she's like, Snake Eyes. That never happened. Right. So that's going to be interesting to see where they thought that was going to fit in the film, if there was going to be some talk about where these deleted scenes may go. I'd love it if in the physical copies we get almost like a cut of the movie where the scenes are plopped in there. Would you like to see that?
Oh yeah, that was something I really loved about what they did with Retaliation when they released the extended version of Retaliation, where they actually had deleted scenes as part of the film. I think that makes a big difference. There's a difference between going to the end of the movie and watching 5-minute deleted scenes and be like, oh, that's cool, and then seeing them actually how they tied them into the film itself. Now with Snake Eyes, it's going to be a little bit tough because, like you mentioned, that scene with the Baroness, calling him Snake Eyes or whatever, there is a scene where she kind of meets him for the first time where he's with Kenta in Tokyo, which is a completely different setting and a completely different scene than you saw in the trailer. So I don't know how they could tie that into the existing film.
I've already met you, Baroness. What are you talking about?
I know you call me Snake Eyes. I know you know I'm Snake Eyes. Yeah, we met in Tokyo.
Ago. What's going on?
Right. So yeah, I don't know how they could do that, but it would be interesting to see kind of. I would love an extended edition. I don't know if I'd really love a quote unquote director's cut, just because I wasn't really a fan of the way the director handled some of those fight scenes and stuff. So I'm not sure I really want to see his vision more deeply. I know we dreamt about the Schwenke cut that'd be over 4 hours long, but it would be like 4 hours of jump, 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 jump. I think I'd probably get sick.
We'd all be throwing up, wouldn't we?
Yeah, exactly.
And obviously the other main deleted scene that was revealed by, I believe it was ET Online. They posted an article on Tuesday and gave us like a exclusive first look at this really interesting montage of Henry Golding as Snake Eyes sword training with the Arashikage clan at the temple. I thought this was really cool, and it shows you how much work that Henry put in, so of his martial arts and sword fighting techniques as well, in order to pass as a real expert. I have no idea why this was cut out. Like, I look at it and I think, when you watch this movie, it feels like he's there for like 4 days, if that. Right. When in reality, there's a pretty significant amount of time that he's at the temple, and you don't really get that feeling.
Not
Whereas
at all.
this montage would give you a bit more, like, I don't know, a bit more depth to it, wouldn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's training montages can be kind of corny, but I think in this case it would have helped because, like you said, it's like okay, he was a guy who worked in a fish factory, went to the Arashikage
Hey,
temple
fish
for 3 days and was a ninja master. I mean, it's like, it just that didn't really jive. But I think adding some of this additional training would certainly go a long way to sort of developing his character and his skills and stuff like that a little bit better.
Yeah, because there was no point where it was like a few weeks later or like this
Right.
that. There's none of that. So it does literally feel like he's there for the when it goes to dark, when it goes to evening, and he runs away and talks to Kenta and then comes back. You just
Yeah.
feel like that's the time period you're dealing with.
Right.
I think there's mention of it. There's mention of it in the film. They say something like a couple of weeks or something like that.
Yeah.
I'd have to watch it. I'll have to watch it again. I'm going to watch it again, so it's not a problem.
Yeah. Sure.
But yeah, like that confused me when I saw that like you say, that training montages can be corny, but it's really well filmed. Like they're slowly closing in on the tempo.
Yeah. In this case, it was done really well. Yeah.
Yeah, and he looks the part as well. Like he really looks like he knows what he's doing, which is all an actor needs to portray, really, doesn't it? Yeah. So all a little bit. I don't know. We're a little bit down on this weekly roundup, and obviously at some point we're going to be probably moving off, of this particular weekly kind of setup, and we're going to be looking at. We joked about it last time as well, where we're going to do like a Lady J weekly roundup, Amazon TV. I mean, where do you think that stands now after the kind of like I'd say poor performance of this?
Yeah. I would hope it's still moving full speed ahead. It seemed kind of clear. Well, I can't say it seemed clear because we didn't really see anything, but the way they sort of described the Lady J series, it sounded like it was going to be a pretty different thing than the Snake Eyes film was. So I would hope that they're not just going to kind of kick it to the curb. You never know. I mean, the Snake Eyes performance was not great. I think they'd have to be kind of convinced to invest some capital in the Lady J series, but I think there's an opportunity there, even without Snake Eyes blowing the doors off, that I think they can tell a different story and do a different format and be successful. I think instead of, it's a different. I mean, just like we talked about in theatrical compared to streaming, I mean, it's a whole different world right now. And if you're maybe given the opportunity to make something specifically for streaming, like the Amazon Lady J show is, they have an avenue to kind of figure out how to tell these stories a little bit more effectively to the right audience and in a way that might generate a little bit more interest. I mean, personally, I could foresee, as long as it's well done and as long as, it kind of captures what you want to capture, an Amazon, Lady J TV series doing a lot better than a film might. I think a lot of people have kind of agreed. G.I. Joe is the kind of, it's got a large entourage of characters. And the way the universe is kind of built almost lends itself better to sort of an ongoing series, kind of thing, rather than a big 2-hour movie once every few years, because you're never going to explore all the various different characters and elements of a G.I. Joe, of the G.I. Joe universe in one 2-hour movie every 4 years. So in a way, starting to develop this streaming, service, again, as long as they get the right people involved and make something of decent quality, I think could kind of kickstart that sort of thing and make things happen in ways that you can't in films. And I think we're seeing that with kind of the Marvel MCU right now, where they've really gravitated towards the Disney Plus series. And, this year alone, we've seen 4 different ones. We're in the middle of the 4th one now, and they've really started building out this whole broad universe that you wouldn't have been able to get close to touching if they're just sticking to Hollywood cinema alone.
Yeah.
Now, of course, Marvel and G.I. Joe are at complete opposite ends of the spectrum as far as popularity goes right now. But I really think that's where things are leading. And, Star Wars is going to be doing the same thing. There's supposed to be a bunch of different streaming Star Wars series coming out over the next couple of years. So I think you're getting to the point where maybe they're realizing that if we're having this ongoing battle between Hollywood and streaming as far as the movies go, maybe we just, focus on stuff built for streaming and kind of use that as a way to kind of get eyes on the brand, because you're going to have a whole wealth of Amazon subscribers that already pay for the service that probably wouldn't go out to the movie and watch Snake Eyes, but will say, oh, this looks cool. And, I've already got the service. I'm already paying for it. So let me just watch it and see how it is. And get more invested in kind of the G.I. Joe universe. So I think there's still a great potential for that with the Lady J series. And I really hope they don't just kind of flush it away because of how
Same.
Snake Eyes did.
Same, but mainly because we've already got the graphics ready for it. No, I agree. I'd 100% agree on that too. I asked the question just 'cause obviously I'm interested in what you say, but I do feel as though it shouldn't be that Snake Eyes, didn't do the numbers that we wanted it to do, so therefore everything is scrapped. I think it should be like, well, this is a different thing entirely, and it might be more successful. Let's try it and go that way. I would anyway, but anyway, that's the news. This 2 weeks, however long you've missed out.
Well, if I can just interject one more thing, kind of Hollywood versus streaming. I think talked a little bit about Star Wars, but I think you can really look towards Star Wars as sort of how this could all work out, because Last Jedi and The Rise of Skywalker made a decent chunk of change. But, one of those two movies was generally hated by the majority of the audience. I mean, some people who hated, The Last Jedi might like Rise of Skywalker a little bit more. People who hated, I don't know, whatever. But those two movies were not very popular at all and kind of dragged Star Wars down into the mud a little bit. But then The Mandalorian came out and pretty much wiped that all away. So that just kind of goes to show you what a high quality streaming show can do for a brand overall. And I would think that The Mandalorian probably lifted Star Wars up quite a bit, where if the last taste of Star Wars in people's mouths were the last two movies of that trilogy, they wouldn't be thinking so great about Star Wars right now. But because Mandalorian was there and kind of added that breath of fresh air, once again, it's back in the zeitgeist and popular again.
Here's something to upset you. Could you imagine what a Snake Eyes Mandalorian streaming show would have been like, as opposed to a short, kind of movie? Imagine what you could have done in that time to incorporate lots of different interesting storylines. You wouldn't have to have him like on this massive redeeming tip where he'd killed loads of. It was his fault that loads of people were killed,
right?
And the temple was burnt to the ground. Instead of that, you had like the time to develop that character. That would have been 1,000 times better, would it not?
You could build out the relationship with him and Storm Shadow a little bit more. Take a couple episodes to kind of form their bond and whatever. It would have been that would have been a really great approach in my mind. And I think Snake Eyes is popular enough that it could happen. You take the character, bring him right up, to the climax of the series, and have him have the accident that scars him and he loses his voice kind of at the end. And I think there would have been a real great avenue for some awesome storytelling there.
They could have even done a whole series without that, and then series 2 would have been where he gets effed up. There's a lot they could have, I think, and they wouldn't have had to, I'm not saying like change the entire idea or story or whatever, but like just giving it that time to breathe. I know Kate and I have had this discussion ad infinitum, and she's always said, why didn't they just do a TV series? Like that would have been so much. Like there's so much more you can do in that. So like I'm not going to just take complete credit for this particular idea. And also it's
Kate's
not like
the brain behind the outfit. We know that.
Yeah, I think everyone knows Kate's the brains in this setup. But yeah, so okay, well that brings us to the end of the news. Can you call it that? I guess you can. Like I said, I don't know what the future is going to look like in terms of what Justin and I are going to be doing over the next couple of years, but we'll work it out.
We'll find something.
Yeah, we'll work it out.
We'll find something.
I'm not saying this is the last episode either. Like, there could be more things that happen in the next couple of weeks, and more things to talk about. But before we do go, Justin, quick Virtual Running Club update. How are you getting on? Are you still busting away at your usual routines?
I am. Yeah, I'm sticking with it. I hit all 5. Well, actually, no, I didn't hit all 5 days this week. I slept through my alarm on Monday, so I missed on Tuesday. So I missed a biking day on Tuesday, but I hit it the other 4 days. Yeah.
Slacker.
15 miles I got to make up somewhere else, I guess. But
you should just be like running on the spot while you're doing this episode.
But no, for the rest of the time I did my weights all 3 days. I rode 15 miles on the bike yesterday.
Amazing.
Doing pretty well. I'm still not sure when I'm going to actually get out and do the actual running club tasks, but I feel like I'm getting kind of ready.
Just don't do them and say that you did, and it doesn't matter. Done.
Hey, there you
No,
go.
I'm just kidding. But yeah, I have been, obviously for the last 2 weeks, it has just been attached to the laptop, and it's been seriously stressful. Like, a lot of work has gone into what eventually came out in with Armor 2. So obviously that was like taking up the majority of my time. But I did manage to MacGyver my own little setup where I would raise my laptop up quite high on the central island, and I would run on the spot while I did all my editing work. And I tell you now, that felt like I did that for like hours at a time, where I'd just be walking on the spot or jogging on the spot. And I tell you now, like, that felt more than I would ever do just 30 minutes every now and again on a cross trainer or a treadmill.
That's awesome. Yeah.
So I've been doing that like pretty much throughout most of the times when I was editing editing the shows and everything. And then since then, it has been a case of doing a similar thing where I carve out like an hour, sometimes a bit more of the day, and I stay on my feet and I walk and I run as much as I possibly can within that time. So that's what I've been doing, and it is starting to feel like I'm, starting to kind of get so much more ready for this task. But what I'm going to upgrade to now for the next week is a morning exercise and an evening exercise. So I'm going to do like, and those will probably start half an hour, on the cross trainer and then the treadmill. And then what I'll do is I'll increase the times and keep you updated as to how I'm doing. But that's why I haven't been sending screenshots of like the times, whatever, because I haven't had any. I've just literally been going like this, standing up.
Hey, whatever works, man. You got to do it.
You've got to, when you don't have the time to mess about, you can't, it's just how it is. But that's the update so far for the Virtual Running Club. I'm ready to carry some 5K, Beautiful. I don't know, tons of stuff in a backpack. I can do it. We'll see how that goes. Anyway, Justin, thanks for joining me again for another episode.
Absolutely.
What is it?
The Full Force Movie News Burst Weekly.
Do you know what? That's why we pay him. That's why we pay him the big bucks. I'm going to use that punching maneuver as your intro as well.
Oh, okay. That's good.
For about 5 minutes, and then I'll have loads of... There you go. Perfect. Look at that. Yeah. Good form. Man. Good form.
Paramount, call me for the Snake Eyes sequel. I'm all over it.
Lorenzo did say that, if they've got a background in martial arts, Justin seems to have a background in
random tension,
gently caressing people in the face
with my knuckles.
Anyway, that brings us to the end of this episode. Thank you for watching the Full Force Movie News Burst Weekly, as Justin so eloquently put it earlier. Massive thank you to my awesome co-host, Justin Bell. See you next time, and as always, mate, after 3, 1, 2, 3... Full Force! Lady J TV series. Yay! Make sure you get involved with the discussion by liking, sharing and commenting on these videos, and as always you can keep up with the show after listening by following on Twitter @TheFullForce, liking the Facebook page facebook.com/TheFullForce, and if you would like to contact the show you can message us on either of those platforms with feedback and questions. We also have a Patreon page, so if you want to show your support for the show, see your name up in lights on these videos, or enjoy exclusive bonus content, then check out patreon.com/TheFullForce podcast, or click on the link on any of the posts this podcast appears in. Full Force!